All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Here we go. Who would bet against an Elon Musk company these days? We've all been living through and witnessing a generational advancement in business, much of which has been very due to the one and only real-life Iron Man, Mr. Elon Musk.
Hey. Those Merlin engines are fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, good idea for an electric jet.
You do?
Yeah.
Then we'll make it work.
And so, what is Pravduh and why is it important now? Well, it's no secret that we have a completely divided stream of media these days. There used to be this thing called journalism, where people would go dig out stories, investigate, track down the details, and build some sort of compiled case that they would share the facts, figures, insight about any certain project or story. But over time, with the increase in consumer trust and the decreased individual attention to care and detail, the news has hijacked our fight or flight instincts and started crafting stories that spark fear and divide through the medium. Remember in Anchorman 2 when the Ron Burgundy's team had that one car chase or something that they decided to follow?
What's that?
Huh? Oh, that's nothing. That's just a car chase of the satellite feed from Milwaukee.
You know what? Give it to me live to start the broadcast.
And he was just on the air, and for the first time, they did news about nothing.
No, that's not news, Ron.
Give it to me live, okay? And don't question me again.
And they just followed the car case, and he's like, oh.
Why is there a local car chase on the TV?
It's Burgundy. He insisted.
Can't you see what the son of is doing? He didn't have a story, so he made one.
You can't do that.
And they ended up in that scene discovering that the ratings went through the roof for nothing. They were not sharing helpful or unhelpful information. They were just creating a panic and stir of emotions.
Tell Ron to speculate who's driving the car.
Ron, speculate on who's driving the car.
We believe the driver may be on drugs. He's probably 6'7", 6'8", but a skinny 6'7", 6'8", about 160.
And that triggered this new industry for news, at least in that movie. But it wasn't too far off of real life. We went through that however long ago in our own news and have yet to recover. And so between the structural mindset of trying to keep people engaged no matter what, and between huge corporate interests that are fueled by the mean green thing of money itself, mainstream media has become fractured to a degree of impossible recognition. And with that has fallen the chances for legitimately indifferential stories in nearly every local and national segment. But, I mean, if you watch 90% of news channels, mainstream, lamestream media, you will get one story. And if you watch the other 5 to 10% of channels, you will get a completely different story, sometimes the exact opposite. Now, how can a story be so different? How is it that facts find their way to be so fluid? And how is it that everyone's favorite African billionaire, Elon Musk, can possibly bridge us back into journalistic sanity? Well, the answer may be more simple than imagined. Elon first started talking about Pravduh back in May of 2018 when he said, "Going to create a site where the public can rate the core truth of any article and track the credibility score over time of each journalist, editor, and publication. Thinking of calling it Pravduh." Which, until Elon later explained, I understood it to be the Russian word that stands for justice and truth. But as you'll find out later, it's actually named after the communistic publication, Pravduh, that has historically had its own thing of fake news. If you haven't figured it out, fake news. If you haven't figured it out, Elon is a big deal on Twitter, plus in the world, but Twitter specifically has been becoming more Orwellian over time. When news channels are gaslighting and Wikipedia and Webster's are changing their definitions in real time to fit any newly formed radical narrative, if you are a good doer like Elon, it becomes and has been becoming increasingly deflating to participate in those types of broken systems of misinformation and hidden interests. Elon famously works with the mindset of first principles. He's metaphorically walked his teams through the processes of the cheapest way to get the aluminum atoms that end up in a car from atom to a car. And he has also guided his rocketry teams into thinking about, if we just had the raw materials laid out on the ground, all the raw materials that are going to end up in the rocket, what would be the easiest, least expensive way to build that into a rocket? And you would have to be living under a rock to not have heard about SpaceX or Tesla or any of the other companies that Elon has really been digging into. And so when he says something like, I'm building a site that can have a journalistic score of honesty so we can have faith and trust in writers, I've got to say he's at least got my attention. So imagine it. Producers of content or the content itself are going to have the chance of legitimacy scores or like these honesty ratings. Stories themselves may even be able to be grouped with other stories on the topic for ease of browsing other people's input, and people themselves will be able to have their own golden rule score where the better they are or the worse they are will be publicly displayed. And so being the best, most honest journalist becomes the goal versus how today is, where it seems as though crafting stories for SEO, clickbait, and fury are the driving factors. Investors and analysts already have this sort of built-up rating score so as to help the public see whether or not and how accurate these analysts and investors have been over time, whether it be through their opinions or their reporting on public companies. You can see, for people that have been analysts historically against Tesla, you can see the people that have been right on the mark when they're talking about products and things coming out, and people that you wouldn't trust with a 30-foot pole. I'm sure different topics and types of claims are going to have some sort of variance in the weight that they have for the score, but I could imagine, much like even Bitcoin, how there's mining, and perhaps people can build up different parts of their scores or even build up some sort of currency for helping validate, helping verify, and keeping facts and stories straight over time. I think that this type of group think and group work is going to be some sort of baseline structure for how this can be built out. But this brings me to another angle. The issue of today is companies like Facebook and Twitter have started fact-checking stories in an increasingly biased and backhandedly lazy way. They will outsource and hire third-party fact-checkers who are very obviously politically biased, and they've been flagging stories false, which are true, and they have been granting stories that are false as true. And it is becoming difficult as people that are sticking in line with the news as it comes out to try and fight the propaganda of fake news in the real world, because so many people just rely on that initial headline or the initial story. And in the world that seems like is being built by mainstream media, is they are caring less and less about being right, more and more about being first, and more about scripting the narrative before others can have the chance to grasp the facts. For example, Donald Trump on many fact-checking sites has had his statement about Hillary Clinton acid washing her servers as false. Now, if you remember, the story with the context of this was Hillary Clinton got a subpoena for 30,000 emails. And before she gave those up, she broke all her devices, she deleted all her emails, and she blamed it on technical issues. And so when President Trump would say she acid washed her emails, which also means she deleted her emails, he was getting that flagged false because she didn't literally dump her computer into a bath of acid. And so the context and the perception of what's said is being graded, and that is getting turned into an alternated reality. And so we need something that can stick to the truth of stuff so people aren't in split realities. So fact checkers today are false because when it fits their agenda or not, they will adjust the truth or deceit to match their hope or reality. They're literally changing history based off of grading the truth in something based off of perception of one's words versus the facts on the ground. For something like Pravda, I mean, we're all living in this world where we can't trust the news, and we're getting close to indistinguishable deepfakes. Wait till that world is upon us, and you can't tell whether or not you're watching someone say words that they said. So when the public sees a story on Pravda, and they can have faith that they're reading the real news, or at least getting the details with all the known context, this will be able to help change the world for the better. Think of some sort of Wikipedia-style page for a story with multiple contributors and maybe even long-term updates, all sorts of hyperlinks and video access, audio clips for witnesses, and trust scores you can actually rely on, maybe linking articles that built up to that story or kind of catalog some things that are historical elements that help one understand the significance. I don't know. But you may ask, how does something like that not become corrupt? As we're seeing today, Wikipedia is getting edited to fit narratives. Webster's dictionary is getting changed on the fly. Google is shadow banning things. And so we are in a world where we have to fight corruption that will sadly naturally try and take hold. Well, I don't know. So thank goodness I'm not building it. But let's see what Elon said about it. There were many tweets to follow after that first tweet that I showed before. And so Elon followed up with, even if some of the public doesn't care about the credibility score, the journalists, editors, and publications will. It is how they define themselves. This is big news. Elon is huge to forcing functions. A forcing function could be a tax, maybe like the Chinese tariffs, which if something's too expensive to buy or have made somewhere else, the company will naturally be forced monetarily to look elsewhere. This is how we basically forced, through monetary forcing functions, more jobs to get created in the US over the last couple of years because Chinese tariffs went up, certain corporate taxes in the US went down. It just became cheaper to do business here. And so if there's a forcing function on Pravda for people to have a better career there via them being honest, they will have this forcing function, this kind of publicized moral forcing function for people to work harder to be more honest. I think that this is a good idea. Elon created a poll with two options. Question being, create a media credibility rating site that also flags propaganda botnets. Yes, this would be good. No, media are awesome. He continued on, come on, media, you can do it. Get more people to vote for you. You are literally the media. And which he ended with, amazingly, the media is awesome vote is declining, despite hundreds of articles attacking this very poll. So there wouldn't be a good business launch on Twitter through Elon without some trolling going on. But for Elon's tweets, this actually did get a ton of traction. Having over 220,000 likes is representative of that being something powerful. And remember, back in 2018, Elon's follower count was closer to 15 million than the 35 million it is today. Of course, people started trying to work out how this could happen. But trolls and spam bots could ruin it. Need good plan to counter them. Not only needs to be bot-proof, but seek and unmask anyone operating a disinformation bot army. Great point. And if you could extrapolate his level of delivery on promises he's made to the public, you can rest assured that this will be heavily focused on. Speaking of following up, typically, when Elon brings up something to the public, he's already been working on it for a while. Remember when he started talking about tunnels, and then so quickly he got the Boring Company together? Well, I remember him talking about tunnels almost 2 years before he launched the Boring Company, and so there was already this frustration, and then he started churning. He got intellectually prepared, and then when the timing came, he really did take action on it, but it wasn't like it really was him just sitting in traffic one day and starting the company. It was that day in traffic ignited all of the time that he spent thinking about tunneling, and then he put that into action. So to see that he brought this up in 2018, but he incorporated in 2017 is another sign that this wasn't just something he thought of and then started tweeting about. It was something he was thinking of, and then society showed that it was time to bring it out into public for some sort of testing of the temperature, testing of the waters, see how it would get received. And quite honestly, the time has continued to ripen. He's not kidding, folks. I noticed that one of Musk's agents had incorporated Pravduh Corp in California back in October last year. I was wondering what that was all about. So I'm thrilled on this, and I'll share a little more on the original few tweets momentarily, but I just want to say, I have watched for years and years. Almost all of media has made up stories, spread rumors, looked to cause drama, pushed out lies, and have chosen to either take 5 times as long of time as they need to retract something, or they will simply turn around, double down on it, and leave those stories and blatant lies up. This has been eroding our society in so many ways. I mean, how many people today still believe that Trump colluded with Russia to win the 2016 election? And the reason this is that for the last 4+ years, mainstream media has allowed the perpetuation of this lie for that to still be the case. The media doesn't care. This is something that holds us divided. And there's so many reasons to be mad at Trump. I don't think it's fair that we have the media making up all these fake stories as to why we should be more mad at Trump or something. But for them to get away with creating the Russian hoax, and then for big tech to go around and censor when the Washington Post reveals the emails that link Hunter Biden and Joe Biden to literal corruption, it's now become a dangerous world where big tech is on one side of the aisle, literally trying to proactively censor certain stories about the people they want in power, when they will also, in the same hand, I guess with a different hand, they'll do that with one hand, and with the other hand, they will allow misinformation to be spread about the other side. And so, I'm just so sick of it. That's why I'm making these videos. Can't we all just get along? Anyways, sidetrack. I'll probably cut that out. So in a Pravduh world, I would not only hope that a story like that wouldn't see the light of day, but if it happened to, it would get squashed immediately, and then all of the people, all the contributors, all the ones that choose to regurgitate and reshare the story would be dinged. And that would be so great. For the liars to get scolded, and for the truth givers to be ones awarded. That sounds awesome. And so people would be forced to comply with the understood facts versus pushing out conspiracy, because they wouldn't want to harm their credibility. I mean, it's genius. Genius. Every man's got 1 or 2 good genius ideas in them. I just hope Pravduh builds ghost profiles on every journalist, but mainstream media journalists. So even before they build the profile on Pravduh, they have this sort of ghost profile, which has a pre-factored in rating of the stories that they have been a part of or published anywhere. That would be something interesting to see. I mean, we need to know who to trust, and we absolutely need to be able to rely on quality sources of news. So when Pravduh was getting talked about back in May of 2018, Elon liked the name, but he was met with a roadblock. Tried to buy Pravduh.com, but Russia said no. Turns out they already use it. Yo, my man, what's the deal here? Are you doing a bit? Is it like a long-term trolling thing? Something needs to be done to reward consistent, high-quality journalism. Some in media are absurdly indignant before even seeing the product. Odd. I don't think anyone is indignant about the website you want to start. I think journalists are indignant about your attack on our profession. This is going to help journalism, not harm it. Please be so kind as to hold your fire until you actually see it. I'll gladly hold my fire, Elon. You see this? Of course. Pravduh! It is named after the most pernicious propaganda machine in history, specifically to highlight what we want to avoid. It's called satire. The tweets continue. Can I ask if it's a coincidence that your sudden fixation on how reporters are turds immediately follows critical investigative journalism on the safety of your factories? Pravduh was incorporated a year ago. Also, Tesla factory safety has improved every year and is now better than industry average. Misleading articles refer to Tesla being worse than average in 2015 when we were just figuring things out. Savage. And so hopefully you had some sort of spark of hope for a future of truthful and transparent media, where journalists have the ability to get credited for doing the right job, for doing the right thing, and for not needing to rely on misleading headlines or twisty facts to help hidden interests. as long as Pravda can work out the way to legitimize fact checkers or the public voting system that would legitimize stories and add value to the credibility of the do-gooders, this thing will take off and become hopefully some sort of standard for future publication sites. And hey, maybe Pravda is the thing that creates the demand, and then all the other big companies and organizations will follow suit, maybe add their features, copy, and just bring their own organizations up to speed. Or maybe Pravda will be the main thing and the gold standard for honest journalism. Because I don't know about you, but Twitter is not a great place to get news. It's a great place of great amounts of news, but it's not a great place of greatly done news. At a certain point, we as consumers may get to a point of no return as far as being able to build up the trust for mainstream. And with most news organizations, I'm already basically there. And so I haven't heard anything about Pravda in quite some time, basically since these original tweets. But with how this last year has gone, and just how politicized everything is becoming, and how radically false news is becoming more and more common, I don't expect Pravda to stay hidden for too much longer. Problem solved. I was able to buy Pravda.com. Game on.